Okay. I know there may be one or two more people who registered who are planning on joining us tonight, but we can go ahead and get started with introductions, I think, and then hopefully answer any questions for people who may end up joining us a little bit later. So again, welcome everyone. I'm Brianna. I'm an intern with the City Manager's Office working on the ADA transition plan. With us, we have our Assistant City Manager, Nat. And Nat, I'll turn it over to you really quick to introduce.
Great. Thank you so much, Brianna, and hi, everyone. Glad to see you all this evening. And as many of you are aware, we are launching a ADA transition plan update. The most recent update was in 2012, so it's been some time, where there were 34 buildings, 27 parks, 22 parking lots and structures, and over 1,150 curb ramps and 300 pedestrian signals that were identified as needing to be improved to meet federal and state accessibility standards. And since then, we've been working towards completing those recommended changes. We've, as a city, have launched the ADA transition plan update here, and as we're in 2023 now, and selected the firm of Jensen Hughes to work on this project with our staff team. So my role is the Assistant City Manager for the City of Monterey, and also as a ADA coordinator is to help facilitate that process. And thank you, Brianna, on our team for helping coordinate this effort with our team, as well as Mark Ackerman from the City of Monterey, who will ask to be introduced next.
Yes, hi everyone. So my name is Mark Ackerman. I'm an intern in the City Manager's Office, as well as alongside Brianna, actually. She's been taking point on this, and I've been kind of playing some catch up. So I'm happy to be here and get some good notes and hear some feedback from everyone. And thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. And then let's hear from the Jensen Hughes team.
Sure, thanks, Nat. Hello, everyone. Jasper Kirsch with Jensen Hughes. I've been working with different cities, counties, public entities, helping assist with their ADA self-evaluation and transition plans for the past 15 years or so. It's a real passion for myself, as well as Josh Clipp, who joins me today, who's a policy specialist. So where I focus on the technical aspects of the built environment, Josh Clip covers more the policy procedures and services activities side of things. So hand it to you, Josh.
Thanks. Yeah, Clip, ADA policy specialist with Jensen Hughes. I like to say I'm a recovering attorney. I practiced for over 20 years, specializing primarily in the ADA, and also a certified access specialist through California's Division of the State Architect. So, but yes, I focus on the evaluating the accessibility of the city's programs, services, and activities.
Great. Thank you both, Jasper and Josh. And we'll hand the presentation back over to Brianna.
Thanks, everyone. And before we get started, I also just wanted to introduce Josephine Ortega, who is working in our community development office, and she's been an incredible asset to kind of help us really start looking at the building requirements, especially. I don't know, Josephine, if you wanted to say a word or two.
I'm just glad to be participating tonight. I am the plans examiner with the City of Monterey. I'm also a licensed architect, and yeah, I'm glad to be part of this, the organization of trying to get our city back on track.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Josephine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. If I can find the right screen. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation today, a few housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded, so for members of the public, just wanted you to be aware. Let's see if I can get to my slideshow. Here we go. And we will be posting this recording to Have Your Say Monterey, which is our public engagement website. We will go ahead and have a hard stop at 7:30 on the hour mark. I will keep everyone muted other than our panelists until it's time for questions and comments at the end. If you would like to speak at that time, please use the raise hand function and we'll unmute you when it's your turn. You also can be submitting comments or questions in the Q&A section throughout the presentation. Just for those who are calling in tonight or who are only able to listen to this presentation, I do have a physical PowerPoint that I'll be going through, and I'll be reading all of the text and kind of describing some of the images for our audience that's only listening. So just wanted everyone to be aware of that. It may take me a little bit to get through everything, and I appreciate your patience. And I believe there's also the ability to enable closed captioning through Zoom. And if anyone has any trouble with that, I wish I could say, let me know and I'll help, but I actually don't exactly know how that function works. So we might be able to do a live transcript. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. So just a brief timeline, we had our first ADA transition plan developed in 1994, which was obviously developed shortly after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed by Congress. In 2012, 2013, we updated that plan. So on the slide here, 2012, 2013 ADA transition plan update included 34 buildings, 27 parks, 22 parking lots, structures, and approximately 1,500 curb ramps and 300 pedestrian signals. In March of 2022, the City of Monterey published a request for proposals, or an RFP, for a new update to its ADA transition plan. And in June of 2022, Jensen Hughes was selected as the City of Monterey's ADA consultant. And again, we're really glad that they're able to be here tonight to offer additional information and potentially help us answer any questions that the public has. In December of 2022, our city employees completed an ADA self-evaluation survey, and I'll go into what that is a little bit more in just a moment. January of 2023, first priority sites were surveyed by Jensen Hughes. So those are our physical city properties that need to be examined for physical barriers, and we'll talk about that more as well. And coming up in the spring of 2023, we're looking at doing additional site surveys of our leased properties, audits of previously inspected city facilities, and any other I didn't have this on the slide, but also continuing to look at our policy review for programs and services offered at the city. On the next slide here, I have a visual which basically gives us a breakdown of each of the steps towards creating this the ADA transition plan document. And it starts at the top left with self-evaluation. Our programs, services, policies, and practices are kind of grouped under there. As part of that, we're working with Jensen Hughes to review those policies, programs, services, and practices. We're completing staff questionnaires, and eventually we'll receive recommendations based off of the review of those from Jensen Hughes. On the right side here, so these two parts work together, we have the transition plan that includes physical barriers, and that includes our facilities, parks, and public rights of way. Down here at the bottom, grouped under both of these, we have public participation and outreach, prioritization, budgeting, scheduling, transition work plan document, and city staff training. And then finally at the bottom, we have implementation, which is the goal for creating this plan, is so that we know exactly what we need to do and how we can act upon that. So right now the city is working with Jensen Hughes to survey some additional properties that weren't included in our original, not original, the first updated 2012-2013 ADA transition plan. We're also going to audit some of the progress we've made in some of these facilities and our curb ramps, and review city policies, practices, and procedures to ensure that we are providing as much accessibility as possible. At the end of last year, as I said, all of our departments completed a self-evaluation survey regarding their understanding of and efforts towards making the programs and services that they offer accessible. So on that left-hand side, we're starting to work towards that. And Jensen Hughes is assisting us with reviewing areas, our policy documents, employee handbook, if our meetings and events, things like that, and basically our overall service delivery. And now at the beginning of January, Jensen Hughes also began surveying city properties to address the physical barriers. So the portion here that we're talking about on the right side. As part of the transition plan, they are advising us on existing barriers. So actually, I'm going to pull up the next slide here. And I'm going to skip around because I meant to do this earlier. So I'm going to skip to this one here. So this is the physical barriers and how we prioritize which barriers need to be addressed based on severity level of barriers, the location, frequency of use, public input, and the implementation schedule. And so over on the right of this slide here, we just have a circle that kind of encompasses a lot of these different components: hazards, census data, public input, program usage, deviation, severity, and all of that leads to a priority score for the barriers that they evaluate in the process of their surveying. Coming back up here to the self-evaluation, when I was talking about this before, these are 13 areas of review that Jensen Hughes is helping us look into with the city's policy documents and procedures. And so this includes a transition plan, policies that limit or exclude, communication, auxiliary aids and services, emergency management, awareness, historic sites, policy modification, meeting and event access, human resources, construction policy, staff guidance and training, and drug policy. So these are all areas that Josh in particular is helping us to evaluate and see how we can improve. So coming back to this overall visualization again that I described earlier with both components on each side, both sides of this process include multiple steps, and we're going to continue working on that over the next several months. Obviously, as I mentioned, in the middle here, we have public participation and outreach, which is a really important part of this process. So we want to be here tonight to gather public comments and feedback. And I will turn over the floor to the public in just a moment. But before I do, I'm going to move to the next slide where I just bring everyone's attention to our Disabled Access Appeals Board. This is a board of the city where we hear appeals regarding compliance and enforcement of disabled access across city initiatives, and particularly in planning and building. So on the slide here, I just list out the eligibility to become a member of this board. 3 board members shall be qualified by experience and training to pass on matters pertaining to building construction and/or state or federal disabled access regulations. 2 members shall be physically disabled, and all members shall not be employees of the jurisdiction. So we encourage members of the public who are really passionate about making sure that we are making our programs, our services, and our facilities accessible to all. Please feel free to apply. I have an application section here as a second bullet point. There are copies available in person at City Hall if there are those who would like to come to City Hall during the week, during office hours. There's also an online application form available. You would go to the cityofmonterey.org website, and it would be under City Hall and boards, commissions, and committees. I have a link in this presentation, and I can also put a link in the chat. Well, there's not a chat. I will put a link in the Q&A maybe for people to be able to copy and paste that. One way that we...
real quick, and Brianna, I do want to acknowledge and thank one of the members of the public who's here today, Tammy Jennings, who joined us this morning at the in-person town hall at the Monterey City Council chambers. Tammy has been serving for the past 2 years on the Disabled Access Appeals Board as a city resident, and we appreciate her service. And back to you, Brianna.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tammy. And thank you everyone who has joined us tonight. I noticed we have a couple community members as well. For those of us who aren't able to join us tonight or weren't able to join us in person earlier today, your chance is not over. We still want your feedback. So if you're listening to this recording after the fact, please go to our haveyoursaymonterey.org webpage. If you scroll down on the page, you'll see that there is a featured tile for our ADA transition plan update. You can view the project, which includes details about what we've done so far, what we're looking to do, and also a timeline of kind of what we're looking to complete in the next steps of this project. As you scroll down, there's a news feed, and then there's also a community comments. So I have 2 screenshots here. One screenshot of the homepage with the featured ADA tile, and the second screenshot is of the community comments section. Once you are in the project page, you would go to community projects and simply leave your feedback. This can include experiences that you've had around the city or ideas for how you would like to see Monterey be more accessible in the future. For those who would like to get in touch with us in other ways, I also have a contact us slide here with a phone number, which is 831-646-3799. And we have our email address, suggest, SUGGEST, @monterey.org for additional feedback. So there are many ways that you can get in touch with the city to provide feedback and thoughts and comments and questions as well. If you have questions, we will check that and answer that as well. And at this point, I know we'll go into comments and questions, but before I did that quickly, I wanted to see if anyone from our Jensen Hughes team wanted to add anything on to the process or any additional information I may have left out.
No, just want to add that it's so valuable to get the community's feedback, because as a consultant, you know, we are kind of going item by item through the city in a procedural way, but we don't experience it like the community does and how the constituents do and the people who live in the beautiful city of Monterey every day. So we appreciate any and all feedback, so we can take that and have it integrated into the final transition plan.
Thank you, Jasper. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing just so that I can see who would like to speak. If there's anything in the Q&A or anyone. Go ahead, Nat.
Yep, I was going to ask folks to please, if you'd like to share a few words, your comments, thoughts, please raise your hand, and we like to hear from you. Absolutely. You can also type in the Q&A chat box as well, and we'll do our best to answer questions and take in your feedback.
Yeah. It looks like we have Tammy with her hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and allow her to talk. And then I also see we have someone on the telephone, and we'll come to you next. Go ahead, Tammy.
I just wanted to let everybody know that is listening that we will be having handicap accessible beach mats installed this year. So pass the word to all your ability challenged people, whether it's with women with strollers or wheelchair bound people, will have better access to the beaches now. That's it.
Thanks so much, Tammy. That was very helpful. I appreciate you bringing that up this morning as well. Outstanding.
All right, I'll go ahead and allow our user, or I'm sorry, our participant over the phone. You may speak.
Great. This is Nina Beatty. How long do we have to give comments?
Since it's a smaller audience, Nina, so just a few minutes, but we're not on a huge time crunch trying to get everyone comments.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll start, and if since there's no timer, I'll try to keep it short, and also if I will be submitting the whole of my comments to the city and to Jensen Hughes. My name is Nina Beatty. I'm disabled by electromagnetic sensitivity. I'm disabled according to ADA's definition, a physical impairment that substantially limits one or more of the major life activities and can include a major bodily function. I'm also disabled under California state definition. I experience disabling health effects from exposure to EMF, RF emissions, including from Wi-Fi, cell phones, cell towers, and other wireless devices. Many of the city's programs, facilities, services, policies, and practices are not accessible to me, and the city has refused to engage in meaningful interactive dialogue or to provide reasonable accommodation to reduce EMF exposure, and their actions have been sometimes discriminatory to the degree of abuse. On July 19th, 2022, I told the City Council for 14 years, city staff is engaged in ruses, misrepresentation, and mischaracterization of my requests and of state and federal rules, engaged in intimidation and frightening acts to block me from any accommodation or even to be able to live in Monterey per Fair Housing Act, and have displayed willful indifference to what federal and state laws require, erecting more and more barriers in public facilities over my objections. There are other people in the city disabled like me, and the city has heard from them and ignored them. I sent those comments and other documentation to Jensen Hughes in October. I filed multiple complaints with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing against the city beginning in 2017, including on denied access to City Hall and the public library, and denial of reasonable accommodation and refusal to engage in meaningful interactive dialogue, including in permitting. However, I discovered that there was a 2013 Senate report that found that DFEH had a policy of requiring governor's office approval before pursuing meritorious discrimination claims against a public agency, which has blocked my complaints. Inaccessible facilities include City Hall, public library, the public centers, including the Monterey Conference Center, and the public rights-of-way which the city controls. The Brown Act requires that meeting chambers are accessible to disabled persons. The city made the chambers inaccessible years after I began informing the city of this access barrier for me, and they did so without any notification and without any request for public input, even though other options exist for them. They've increased barriers at the library, now adding an RFID system, which has placed microwave equipment at the front and rear doors and at the front desk, and chips in all materials that can transmit at the right frequencies. They've put in programs like new wireless parking meters, wireless street sensors, which were approved last year. At the Disabled Access Appeals Board, officials have engaged in a sham process in 2017 and 2018, and at previous hearings refusing to discuss wireless radiation, even though it's the issue that affects me. In the permitting and due process, officials have refused to apply ADA and Fair Housing or Fair Housing Amendments Act rules to cell towers that affect me at my home. And in 2018, the city staff recommended in staff report and public hearing a cell tower to be put in front of my home. They ignored my disabled status and claimed a cell tower in front of my house posed no problems of health, safety, or welfare. And the 5.5-hour hearing was held in the same Wi-Fi device-filled city council chambers, yet I had to be there to defend my home and my life and my disabled rights. As I recall, it was at that hearing that I put up signs asking people to please turn off their cell phones, which city staff refused to ask of the attendees, and the signs were removed when I wasn't looking. In my complaint to DFEH in 2021, I said the city rejected my attempts to obtain reasonable disabled accommodation to deny, move, or modify the project, did not engage in interactive dialogue, and refused to postpone the hearing until COVID restrictions were eased, which they had said they would do with controversial projects. In addition, they attempted to discredit me and worked in tandem to approve the project. They mischaracterized my appeal, reframed ADA and fair housing objections as, quote, negative health effects. And there were other irregularities with the process. I've submitted significant evidence to support my claims to DFEH. In hearing minutes, city officials have mischaracterized and misrepresented my disabled accommodation requests and comments, even striking ADA and fair housing references and substituting terms such as concerns and health effects, which the city is not legally responsible for. Many agenda reports have the same mischaracterization and misrepresentation, and I can name the officials that have done this. And in addition, the city has hired consultants who misrepresent ADA and fair housing. I made these requests in 2019, and I make them again here. I requested that Monterey will recognize that I'm a qualified person who is disabled by EMF emissions and ensure that disabled accommodation of my characteristic is accorded reasonable and readily achievable solutions of least exposure or reduced exposure to EMF radiation as recommended by my doctor. Monterey will provide a policy of equal access for all persons' usage of the public right-of-way in decisions regarding placement of EMF-emitting devices. That Monterey will provide equal access for me as a qualified EMS-disabled person to the public right-of-way in areas surrounding my home, and adopt a policy of reasonable and readily achievable accommodation for my stable and reduced exposure to the EMF emission. Monterey will pass a month-long resolution recognizing electromagnetic sensitivity in the same way as Monterey County did in 2017. That Monterey will provide the City Council chambers, as they're required to under the Brown Act, as an access without access barriers for disabled people, and make it a wireless-free and cell phone-free zone, as well as post and announce this policy. Individuals exempt from this policy, of course, would be police and emergency personnel. TV, internet, and computers in the chambers would be wired. Social media services that staff deems important, such as tweeting announcements, will be done from wired devices. That Monterey will make a permanent white path, a reduced EMF exposure path to and from City Council chambers to include the parking area. And finally, Monterey Public Library, that they will conduct a near-term test of a once-a-month accommodation. This was my request several years ago, and now they can no longer do it because of installing the RFID devices. They can't allow me access anymore because they've put wireless throughout the library in all the materials. And that's so I do not have access to the library. And any discussions that have been in the city about renovations or building new buildings in the city for the library have been to increase wireless radiation devices in those new buildings. I've asked the city will contact me if it's considering adopting more wireless technology. They do not. And I finally had asked them to initiate a transition plan for improving access to all these areas of city functioning for disabled people, to include reducing EMF emissions for people disabled by electromagnetic sensitivity. And I refer Jensen Hughes to the 2005 report by the Access Board that they commissioned from the National Institute of Building Sciences called the Indoor Environmental Quality Report. And it was specifically for people disabled by electromagnetic sensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity. It had many, many suggestions, and our California State Architect's Office was involved with that in helping with those recommendations, including adopting the Cleaner Air Room symbol nationally. They have all kinds of plans and things that they have yet to do, but this was the first step in their game plan. So I asked that Jensen Hughes would contact me if they have questions. You have my contact information. I will submit these full comments to the city and to you, and that I would be able to regain access to public buildings, to public spaces, and to public services that I'm entitled to as a resident of Monterey, as a resident of California and the United States. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nina. Appreciate you calling in and submitting your feedback in writing as well. That's helpful to us, and I know we're working on more opportunities to gather feedback as well. So. I think Tammy has her hand raised again. Maybe we'll just see if she has anything else she'd like to say. So we'll ask Tammy to say a few words.
Hi, I just had another comment after this morning. You were asking me the different organizations, and there's a couple more that I was thinking of. One, any veterans organization here. I don't know how to reach them, but I'm sure that there are veterans organizations. And also the Kearns Pool. The director is Lynn Young, and I have her email if you want it. And I was just there. And they also said there's a new aquatics therapy in Pacific Grove. I know it's not Monterey, but it's called Monterey Aquatics Therapy. And it's for handicapped people. So those are two other organizations that you could, you know, contact and hopefully get the word out to them when you have these kind of events.
That's great, Tammy. I'm glad you thought of those. The Josephine Kearns Pool is a good one, and we'll reach out to the Monterey Aquatics group. I serve as the city's rep on the Veterans Issues Advisory Commission for the County of Monterey. We just had a meeting this afternoon in Marina, actually, and I'll be sure to reach out to some of those partner organizations, veterans service organizations as well. And the ones that you had recommended this morning were also helpful. You mentioned MS Monterey, Parkinson's organization. We had a representative from Audubon Society as well. And Josephine on our staff also recommended the ICC chapter and the local AIA chapter. That's the American Institute of Architects. ICC is the acronym for International Code Council. So thank you all. Thank you, Tammy, for your thoughts, and we'll stay in touch as well.
Great.
All right. Go ahead. Back to you, Brianna.
If we don't have any additional comments or questions from either the public or from our panelists, I will go ahead and just remind anyone, again, watching this recording or anyone who is here today that you can continue to provide feedback through haveyoursaymonterey.org or also suggest@monterey.org as an email address and through our suggest line 646-3799. With that, I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.